TikTok reaches a last-minute deal to stay alive in the United States, but questions remain about who really controls the platform. Elon Musk's Grok chatbot floods X with millions and millions of sexualized AI images in just days, sparking international outrage. New York City nurses strike over pay, arguing that $200,000 is no longer rich in the metro area, and it is what they deserve. A major scientific review finds exercise works just as well as medication or therapy for depression. Former special counsel Jack Smith issues a rare warning to Congress about the rule of law. And finally, new polling shows voters souring on President Trump's second term as approvals slip towards the mid-30s. All that and more today on Filtered.
Well, the deal is finally done to save TikTok in the United States. The app's Chinese parent company has officially agreed to create a separate venture to handle U.S. operations.
TikTok has struck a deal to avoid a U.S. ban by spinning off a new American-controlled entity, ending a 6-year legal fight. Non-Chinese investors will own about 80%, while ByteDance, the parent company, keeps just under 20% and licenses their algorithm. Supporters say the move protects national security. Critics argue the most powerful part of TikTok, the algorithm, remains outside U.S. control. To users, the app may look unchanged, but the power structure behind it has fundamentally shifted. Okay, let's dive a little more deeply into this because this is a messy, complicated issue at many, many levels. Let's look at some more of the facts. Who's going to own this? Oracle will now own 15%. And this concerns a lot of people because this was not sort of put out on the open market. This was all decided by President Trump. He essentially picked the players who got involved here, his own cronies. Larry Ellison owns Oracle, is a staunch supporter of Donald Trump. His son, David Ellison, is involved with this as well and is known as a supporter of the president to the extent that he's already reconfiguring CBS News, another media property he took over, to make Trump look good. So if they're willing to do it with one media property, why not another? Another player, MGX, owns 15% of the new non-Chinese TikTok. This is backed by Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund. And they're also heavily involved with Trump in all of his crypto ventures. They're involved with World Liberty Financial. Many people consider that a complete utter scam, but they're already in bed with Trump. Silver Lake, it's a heavyweight Silicon Valley private equity firm. They have very deep ties into big tech, along with Dell and Alphabet. They often provide sort of the connective tissue between Silicon Valley and the Gulf and U.S. infrastructure. ByteDance still owns 19.9% of the company. More important, they're going to keep control of the algorithm and license it to the United States. So here's what concerns a lot of people, and it's across the spectrum. There are some who consider themselves, let's say, America first, who are worried about, well, if Chinese controls it, they can subtly adjust the algorithms to push out content to make Americans hate their own country or to somehow view very sympathetically our enemies. It could be done in a subtle way that might not be noticeable to many observers because each person observing gets a different feed. So that's one concern. On the other side of the spectrum, there are many who believe that TikTok has already been extraordinarily influential in destroying American democracy, in causing dissent, in creating a hate-filled environment that makes a demagogue like Trump get elected in the first place. So this is a concern of people across the spectrum. Now, a reminder, it was years ago, Congress passed a law saying the TikTok has to end its Chinese control. It's going to be shut down in America, or it's going to reside in the hands of Americans. And Trump just ignored the law, as he often does, all last year. So this finally went into play, and Trump formally approved the deal by executive order in September. It's troubling for other reasons. Now, we're used to seeing in Russia someone like Putin, and specifically Putin, saying, okay, you worked with me in the KGB. You are my good ally. You are my henchman. You helped me take care of people. And now we're in a new world. I'm in control. So I'm going to give you all these coal mines or all these aluminum mines, or I'm going to give you this telecommunications industry. It was communism by another name. It was, whether you want to call it authoritarianism or communism, it was the economy being decided by things that aren't in the free market system, just by what capitalists would do on their own. It was being orchestrated by some form of a leader or dear leader. That's what we're used to in Russia, post-Soviet Union. It's what happens in China quite frequently. It's not supposed to be how things are done in the United States, the so-called free market capitalism bastion. And yet this is what's happening. Let's do a thought experiment together here for a moment. Imagine that President Trump is not the president. And let's say, again, just for kicks, I don't even want to mention the name, it'll set off so many. Let's say a President Wyden, a fictional president from another party than Trump, is currently president. And he does this same deal, but instead he says George Soros gets to own, let's say, 25% of TikTok. And Mike Bloomberg, who is a media mogul in his own right, but also a Democrat and an anti-Trump person, he gets to own the rest. How would you feel about that now? I think that all of MAGA world, all of conservatives, and frankly, a lot of centrists and even some liberals would be saying, wait a minute. Whether you love George Soros or not, do we really want someone who's sort of an active political player being handed the gift of a giant media property, which gets into the brains of hundreds of millions of Americans every day? Do we really want that much power consolidated with people who have particular political agendas? So I dare say there would be pitchforks at the White House. There would be threats. There would be maybe ongoing strikes. There would be denunciations. There would be calls for President Wyden, again, a fictitious president, to be impeached if he tried to essentially destroy the rules of free enterprise and hand a wildly profitable and successful media property like TikTok to his political cronies. Well, that is, in fact, exactly what's happening here. And for the most part, with so many other crazy things going on, are we going to invade Greenland? Are we going to invade Panama? With so many other crazy things, this doesn't even get attention anymore. But it should. And it makes a lot of people ask the question, are we sacrificing, are we potentially worrying about getting rid of the problem of outside influence and outside people who essentially hate America or are enemies, controlling the mindset of Americans, and replacing that with another extremist faction that doesn't really care about what's good for America, but is only trying to advance a particular narrow extremist agenda? Is that what happened? I wish I could tell you, time will tell and we'll all sort of know and it'll be obvious. But that's the real danger of something like TikTok. Everybody gets a different feed. And the question is not, if you're a hardcore, let's say, liberal Democrat, it's not as though TikTok is going to say, okay, you're used to subscribing to MSNBC and Bernie Sanders' channel. It's not as though TikTok is going to start just automatically sending you Ben Shapiro feeds and Tucker Carlson feeds and try to force that on you. That's not how it would work. The issue is for the vast, vast majority of Americans who aren't that political, and let's say 1 out of every 10 videos maybe touches on some public policy thing. And one day you hit something, 1 of your 10 is something that is kind of an issue that makes Democrats or centrists look good. And a couple days later, 1 of the 10 videos you click on is kind of sort of something that makes Democrats look really bad. That's when they can say, hey, we're detecting a pattern here. Here's a person out of 20 videos clicked. 1 was sort of pro-Democrat, 1 was sort of pro-Republican. Let's just pick 1 of those and feed that to that person the next day. And if they like that, they watch that, let's double down on it. Let's maybe get 2. Let's go from someone sort of mild-mannered like a Ben Shapiro, and then let's give them a Tucker Carlson and see if they like that. So you can very gradually, subtly test every single American in their mindset and their psyche with a platform like TikTok. So that's the real danger here. I do post most of these videos on TikTok every year, but I don't spend time consuming it myself other than responding to people's questions. What do you think? Are you worried about that? That's my question to you. Does ownership matter of a media property if the algorithm stays the same? Well, if it stays the same, probably not, but I want to hear your opinion on this. Is this a real security fix or just political theater? And who should ultimately control platforms that are this influential? Look, the Chinese or any people from any other country want to come to America and start some kind of a business, a brick and mortar business, a restaurant chain. Most reasonable people would say that's fine. There is something different about national media that completely creates reality for people. And that is, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, exactly what TikTok is doing. Post your comments right here on YouTube in the discussion page. If you're listening to this on any podcast platform, thanks for doing so. Please continue. But if you would like to weigh in and ensure I see your comments, please go to Filtered with TJ Walker. But if you search for me on TikTok, I'm usually the one, or on YouTube, I'm the first or second TJ Walker that shows up. And you will see Filtered with TJ Walker. New reporting shows Elon Musk's Grok chatbot generated and publicly posted more than 4 million AI images in just 9 days, many of them sexualized images of real women and girls. Watchdog groups estimate at least 40% were sexual in nature. Governments across multiple countries have launched investigations. X later added restrictions, but only after the images went viral. The episode highlights how quickly AI tools can cause real-world harm when deployed at platform scale without guardrails. Okay, this is a kind of a sickening story, but we can't ignore it. The irony, of course, is Elon Musk was the guy, way back at the founding of OpenAI saying, safety first, we got to control this thing. It could really wreak havoc in the world. He had a falling out with Sam Altman, decided to have his own thing. And sort of typical with Musk, he just does whatever it takes to get it out there, get it to market faster, get more users. That might be okay with unmanned rockets getting into space quickly when they occasionally blow up. But what if it's your own daughter or you suddenly splattered all over the internet or a local middle school appearing to be completely nude? Are you okay with it then? So this is exactly why, and I give him credit, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida has said we as states need to be able to regulate AI tech. Donald Trump has essentially said, hey, the big tech boys are all in my back pocket. They've given me billions. They're the ones buying my new gold ballroom. So, hey, anything they want, they get, including executive orders saying no state can regulate things. Well, increasingly states with Republican governors are saying they want regulation of AI exactly because of situations like this, and Democrats are looking for it as well. Again, here are the facts. At least 1.8 million sexualized images of women and girls came out in the last few days. Some cases up to 65% are sexualized. More than 23,000 images allegedly involve children. Now, I have not looked at any of this, nor do I want to or plan on it. I am basing this off of reputable reporting from serious news organizations. So I'm not going to try to, and I wouldn't recommend you try it either, because who knows if that could come back to haunt you. And it's, you're essentially aiding and abetting this criminal enterprise. Let's not forget child pornography, the transmission of it, the creation of it, and having it is a crime in the United States, as I think it should. Okay, so other facts. The use of this for creating images surged after Musk did some sort of a bikini post. I don't follow him on Twitter, on X, so I didn't see it, nor do I want to. But this thing is powerful. It's churning out 600,000 images a day. And access was restricted only after a huge international backlash. But even then, the restriction is for paid users. Somehow it's supposed to be better for you to create child pornography, I guess, if you're paying Elon Musk money every month. Here's what Imran Ahmed said. He's with the Center for Countering Digital Hate. This is industrial scale abuse of women and girls. They have been nudifying tools, but never at this scale. One ex-user posted when seeing a Grok generated image of herself, immediately delete this. I didn't give you permission. More facts. Again, Grok is built by xAI, which Elon Musk started and controls, of course, because it has the letter X in it, and that somehow has some special meaning for him. So this is AI sexual abuse shifted from fringe forums to a huge mainstream platform by someone idolized by millions of people around the globe, especially a lot of smart, geeky teenage boys and young men, Elon Musk. Important to point out, this is not like OnlyFans, where someone is saying, okay, I don't really want to walk around naked and do things, but I'm an adult, I want to make money, I'm signing up, I've read the various permissions and consent forms on OnlyFans, so I'm going to do it. This isn't like that. This is just stealing people's images from anywhere. Presumably, you could steal someone you like or don't like, an image of theirs off of Facebook, load it up into Musk's AI platform, and create all sorts of nudity and obscene pictures. So the victims have no consent, no warning, and limited recourse as of right now. And there just isn't any great way of regulating this, especially when our administration is saying, okay, we're going to make things easy for AI to get big. And there is a legitimate argument to help U.S. companies be at the forefront of AI development. There's no doubt about it. But because of that, it's making it harder and harder for states, municipalities, others to regulate this. And what's interesting to me is we are seeing sort of a bipartisan coalition. Elizabeth Warren, the liberal Democrat, Ron DeSantis, the Republican governor of Florida. A lot of people are saying we want to regulate artificial intelligence because we think it's harming our constituents and our culture. That is the job of politicians. So I applaud, in this case, Ron DeSantis and Elizabeth Warren. As I mentioned to you, if you're new to the show, I'm here as a sane, sensible centrist. I'm not just carrying water for one party where I'll always say this party's great and anything someone in this party did is awful. No, I'm calling it like it is. So this is a problem. And it's not a typical left-right problem. In many situations, it's an elite versus masses issue. The elites, the wealthiest, the 5, 10 wealthiest billionaires who own billion and trillion dollar companies say, we want to do whatever we want, no restrictions. And they have an open ear in Washington right now, at least with one orange ear. And then you have sort of everybody else, the bottom 99%, saying, hey, we're not becoming billionaires off this. We just want our kids not paraded around the internet naked and doing perverse sex acts so that their classmates can make fun of them and abuse them for it. That's not a big ask, but apparently even that is too much. Elon Musk, no fan of government regulation unless it's putting subsidies into his pocket. Then he's completely fine with big government. Bailouts, subsidies, he's all for it. But anytime someone suggests the government tell him that he can't do something, he doesn't like that at all. Now, we're used to an internet culture going back to the 90s where it was like, grow first, fix later. Just do the thing, apologize later. Don't ask permission, just do it, break things, apologize later. That was sort of Mark Zuckerberg's attitude, but frankly, the attitude of a lot of very successful internet entrepreneurs. And Elon Musk comes from that milieu. But when it comes to creating hardcore porn at scale of potentially every teenager, for that matter, woman and man in America, that's too much. What do you think? I'd like to hear from you. Should AI tools be publicly deployed before safeguards are proven? And to be clear, all of these platforms do put in rules. They don't really want this kind of publicity. They put in a rule that says something like, okay, if someone asks to see a famous celebrity or they upload a picture and show it as a full nude, there'll be triggers to say they won't do that. But there's always a way around it. And for a while, and again, I have not done this, but I've read reports on this. Someone could say, okay, show me my favorite celebrity in a bikini, and now make it a transparent bikini. They didn't use the word nude, and somehow now they're looking at their favorite celebrity nude. And it's unfair and a little sick. So I want to know what you think about this. Who should be legally responsible for AI-generated harm? I want to know what you think. Please post your comments in the discussion section right here on YouTube. If you're watching this any other place or listening to it on a podcast, come on over to Filtered with TJ Walker on YouTube and post your comments on today's show. Nearly 15,000 New York City nurses are on strike. And while staffing and safety dominates the rhetoric, pay is the core conflict. Hospitals say nurses already average about $160,000 a year, and union demands could push pay past $200,000 a year. Nurses argue that number isn't luxury, it's survival in the New York metro area, where rent and living costs have soared. The debate isn't just about salaries, it's about whether essential workers can still afford to live where they work. Okay. This is a tricky issue. And I don't intentionally try to offend you or anyone, but I may step on some people's feet or feelings here. Let's look at some more of the facts. Okay, they're averaging $160,000 a year. And I'm not saying they don't deserve that. I certainly think nurses are hardworking. It's a tough job. I would be a horrible nurse. I wouldn't want to do it. Society needs nurses. They need compassionate people, and they are often, abused by a lot of patients who treat them like second-class citizens because they're not doctors. So I don't want to seem like I'm one of those people kind of putting nurses down. And yes, New York City, having lived there myself for nearly a quarter of a century, is extraordinarily expensive. But let's look in the facts. The New York City metro median income, according to most recent data, is $55,000 a year. So half of all people in New York City make less than $55,000. Now, I'm not saying nurses only deserve the median. They do have a lot more education than the median person. Certainly in society, New York City, a lot of highly educated people there. The New York City metro average individual average, it's different from the median. The average is 84,000. So they're still getting a lot more than the average. In the New York City, you are making more money than 90% of people if you make $170,000 a year. So nurses' current income already puts them close to being in the top 10%. And yes, I understand New York City is expensive. And we want good nurses. We also want good teachers. And right now, nurses are paid on average better than teachers are. Now, to be in the top 1% in the New York City metro area, you need to make $505,000 a year. That's a lot of money, more than what 99% of people make. And no one is suggesting that nurses deserve to be top 1%. But with a $200,000 income, according to estimates, you would be in the top 7% of income in the New York City area. And with a $200,000 income, you'd be in the top 5% of income earners in all of America. Now, just so you get a sense of what's going on in New York City, the median annual rent in New York City is $43,000. So it's an expensive place. There's no doubt about it. So there are a number of questions here that do need to be asked. I'm going to give you a few more facts. So again, the average in New York City paid in New York hospitals $160,000. Entry-level nurse at some hospital paid $117,000. I had no idea it was that high. I'm not saying it's too high. And the hospitals claim, now this is from the hospital side, I've not received this directly from unions. They are claiming that the unions are asking for as much as $275,000. To be fair, the unions are disputing this. Let's compare this with public school teachers. Starting salary with a BA is $68,900 in New York City schools. If you have a master's degree, which is typically more comparable to what nurses have, if they either have a master's in nursing or if they're in some sort of 5-year program, that would be a more apples to apples comparison. They're getting about $77,000 a year. Mid-career teachers are in the $100,000 to $125,000 range. Other salaries of people in New York City. PR specialist. I mean, when I started in PR in 1985 in New York City, I was paid $5 an hour, but things have gone well for me since then, so don't have any sympathy for me. So the average salary of a PR specialist is $90,000. And you can say, well, TJ, the world doesn't need more flax. The world does need nurses. Okay. TV producers and directors on average, $140,000. And some of those have master's degree from the Yale School of Drama. Camera operators and editors, $90,000, $95,000. Media reporters, most earn less than $100,000. Not the big network anchors, obviously, but TV reporters in New York City. So $160,000 doesn't seem that bad in that context. Okay, here's my bigger issue. I wish we could live in a world where everyone can have a top 5% income. But you know what? If you know anything about math, it doesn't work that way. One of the reasons that a place like New York City is so expensive is there's constant pressure from well-organized, well-unionized group, and I'm not anti-union, saying, well, this group has this, we want more, we want more, we want more. And it helps the incumbents. It helps people who've been there a long time. It helps people who are in politically large and well-organized groups. They can organize and get more. And hey, it's America. You have the right to do that. But as a society, we do have to decide what priorities are. Is it a higher priority for people who are sick to have good care, and I would like them to have good care, than for the person who is shaping your child's brain, their capacity to think, to learn, potentially their entire livelihood and careers, that person who is shaping your child's brain 8 hours a day or 7 hours a day in school, is the nurse more, do they deserve dramatically more pay than that person shaping the brain of your child? Now, you can say, of course, well, let's pay teachers more. If we keep paying more and more and more money for people who work directly or indirectly for the government, then you create a situation where you're creating more inequality. Because again, let me go back to the averages, the average salaries and the average income in New York City. Half of all people in the New York City area make less than $55,000 a year. So when you're paying a government official or a quasi-government official 4 times that, you have to charge more tax proportionally to this average worker, and you're creating a bigger gap between their income of $55,000 or less and the income of someone making $100,000, $150,000, $200,000. Now, here's the part that's going to rub some people the wrong way. If you are a nurse, even in a private hospital or working for a private doctor, you are essentially a quasi-government employee. Why do I say that? Because 5 out of every 10 healthcare dollars in America is paid for by you and me if you're a taxpayer in America. Medicare, Medicaid, veterans' healthcare benefits, other subsidies, tax subsidies to businesses who write off their health insurance costs. The federal government is by far the biggest purchaser of healthcare in America. They spent more than $2 trillion on healthcare last year. So the government is spending money, and I won't call it a subsidy, but it's all a part of that with what nurses' compensation is. So at some point, if we keep rewarding well-entrenched incumbent interest groups, and I don't say that in a disparaging way, but nurses as an interest group are much better organized than, for example, artists who like to live in New York City, media creators who live in New York City, founders of ad agencies who like to live in New York City, professional dancers who like to live in New York City. Those people are all smaller groups, and those people are being priced out. In part, if someone makes $200,000 a year, they can now spend $70,000 on rent, and it's not completely destroying their cash flow. They probably don't want to spend that much, but they could. And if someone only makes $70,000 a year, well, boom, now they can't afford housing. So all of these things are a part of what makes our big cities so unaffordable for so many Americans. And the new mayor of New York City ran on the platform of making things more affordable. So it's true, if nurses get a big increase in salary, it makes life more affordable for them. But if you actually stop and do the math, it has to, almost by definition, make life less affordable for anyone who isn't a nurse or making a salary at a nurse's level or above. And again, some of you are going to write and say, well, isn't TJ a mean, awful person picking on poor, defenseless nurses who have to do horrible jobs? And easy for him to say he probably makes a lot more money. So if you want to just write me off that way, you can. But this is a genuine problem for a lot of people. It's a problem not just for conservatives who don't like prices going up and don't like inflation. It's a problem for people in the center and the left and the progressive side of things who are trying to create a fairer society and create more equality. And I know what you're thinking. If you're a progressive, you're probably saying, TJ, you're an idiot. Wall Street's full of billionaires. Let's just tax them. These nurses making $160,000 are just getting by. Okay, I hear you. But again, the median income in New York City is $55,000. If you're increasingly spending more and more money using direct and indirect tax dollars for certain protected political groups who have favor and have clout, and pushing them up from the top 10% of all income earners to the top 7 to the top 5, it really skews things. And ultimately, it makes people who aren't well protected by unions and who aren't well protected by entrenched interest groups resentful of government. And that's when backlash happens. And that is seemingly what has fueled the rise of Trumpism as well. Now, if you are a conservative, there's plenty of reasons to be against this as well. I mean, first of all, conservatives don't like unions, so they're probably reflexively against nurses anyway, because in New York City they are unionized. So it's a complex issue. And I can't tell you this is the exact salary any one nurse deserves. There should be some case-by-case discretion. But if you're running a giant hospital and you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of nurses, or a healthcare system with thousands of nurses, there have to be starting points. There have to be starting salaries. There have to be certain career levels that people sort of automatically go to. And I think we as a society have to really think very clearly before automatically giving raises to some groups if we're not creating an environment where everyone else sees their standard of living go up as well. What do you think? I would love to hear from you. You can post your comments right here in the discussion section on this YouTube page. Should essential workers earn above average pay by default? And if so, what percentage? Should nurses be in the top 10% of income, top 5%? How should cities balance affordability and wages? Because simply giving higher wages to this group here does make things less affordable for everyone else in relative terms. Please post your comments. A major new scientific review finds exercise may not outperform antidepressants or therapy for depression, but it works just as well. The analysis of nearly 5,000 patients found no meaningful difference between exercise, medication, or psychotherapy in reducing depressive symptoms. That's significant because depression affects hundreds of millions of people globally, and most patients remain physically inactive. The takeaway isn't that exercise replaces treatment, but that one of the best longevity tools is also a powerful mental health intervention. Okay, I've talked about this before, but it deserves more attention. We as members of a capitalist society, and hey, I'm a capitalist, are all in some ways captive to these overall constraints of our system. Capitalism is designed to help people create products and services to make more money. And unfortunately, it's just not a very good revenue model to encourage people, get off the couch, go for a walk. Put your phone down, go for a jog, you'll feel better. Stop scrolling Facebook and actually go lift weights. Nobody's making money off of that. Whereas there are a lot of people making money prescribing you more drugs, prescribing more antidepressants, trying all sorts of new experimental ketamine theories. And I'm not saying those things don't have some usefulness. If you're on any of those or trying those, I'm not telling you to stop. But I do want you to realize what is conspiring, and I don't mean this in any sort of nefarious or criminal way, but if you go to a doctor and say, I'm feeling depressed, it's easy, fast, and quick to just have them take a pen right over here, take this pill once a day. Here, go see this psychiatrist, go see this shrink, go see this psychotherapist once a week. So now you're committing to something, in some cases once a week, maybe an hour, half an hour to get there, another half an hour, and okay, now 2 hours out of your life, maybe your insurance pays for it, maybe you got to pay out of pocket, you're paying with time. And what are you doing in these sessions? May be helpful, but chances are you're sitting more, you're spending even more time inactive, perhaps exacerbating your situation. Again, This study doesn't say that exercise is 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 times better than drugs or psychotherapy. It's not saying that. What it is saying is it is as good. What it's not factoring in, though, is if it's really just as good as those other things, why shouldn't that be the first line of defense? Why shouldn't that be the first thing you do? Because if a little exercise does in fact make you happy and less depressed, and it's just as good as these other things, you do need to factor in the fact that, okay, you're not having to spend money on exercise. You don't have to go to a fancy gym. You can just walk around your neighborhood. You can do jumping jacks if you want. So A, there's the saved money aspect. B, there's saving time. You don't have to get up and drive to go to a ketamine clinic. You don't have to get up and drive to go see a psychotherapist. You don't have to get up, drive, go to your doctor to get another prescription because the last prescription for your happy pills expired after 6 months. You save all that time driving, getting to places. And there's a secondary benefit that you're going to be physically healthier, perhaps reduce your chances of stroke, heart attack, obesity. All of these benefits occur through exercise. In addition to, according to clinical analysis, reducing your chances of depression. So why isn't that the first line of defense? Well, unfortunately, we live in a culture where, and I'm guilty of this, we all want something the easy way. It seems easy. Oh, I don't want to go start running marathons or exercise or go to the gym. Let me pop a pill. It seems easier. There's also more cultural acceptance. Well, everybody I know goes to see a therapist. I should too. And again, maybe you should, but why not incorporate exercise into the mix? And I would say it's because there is no profit motive. Again, I'm a capitalist, folks. I'm not telling you capitalism is evil and we have to get rid of capitalism. But capitalism has an incentive to sell you pills, to sell you billable hours. You know, if you're a and friends and family are psychotherapists, it's a great business model. Hey, you get someone to pay you for an hour a week and you keep them for 30 years. And it's a great revenue model. It is a great revenue model. If you're a psychiatrist and you can have 20 patients come in every hour and you're writing a prescription for them and have to spend no more than 3 minutes with them, that's a good revenue model. If you're a pharmaceutical company making happy pills, that's a great revenue model. You can make billions. There simply is no revenue model to get someone to send an ad to you, a reminder to you to, hey, exercise today. You've watched TV for an hour. Time to stand up and go for a walk for an hour rather than simply watching TV for 3 hours after dinner. Hey, you're at the Costco. You're at the supermarket. Don't spend 5 extra minutes in your car seated waiting for that person to pull out so you can have the closest parking space and walk the fewest steps. Why not go to the end of the parking lot and take an extra 30 seconds getting more steps in to walk? There's so many areas where you can incorporate more movement, more exercise, even if it's not officially going to the gym or running a marathon. If you're looking for ways of exercising and moving throughout the day, you will find it. But I urge you, put it on your calendar. Give yourself an email reminder. As soon as I finish this show, I'm going to be walking to my gym, lifting weights, doing stretches, doing calisthenics, and then running on the treadmill with sprints for 20 minutes, and then walking home. So that's going to be my hour and a half of exercise. Am I more disciplined than you? No. But I give myself an audio reminder every day to do that. It's on my calendar every day to do it. I journal about it every day, and I ask myself the question, did I exercise yesterday? So I've set up a system of daily reminders because you're going to get reminders to take drugs because you get bombarded. Certainly if you've done any kind of Google search, you'll be bombarded with ads for more treatments, more expensive treatments, more healthcare programs, more therapists, more clinics. And again, some of them may be good, but realize the most effective solution, or at least an equally effective solution, may be right in front of you. And all it involves is putting on a comfortable pair of shoes so you can go for a walk. Let me give you a few more facts on this survey. It was a meta-analysis. They looked at 69 different randomized controlled trials. There were 4,985 total participants. Exercise was defined as planned, structured training greater than a week. And the findings were not inconsistent from what I've heard before, but still significant. Exercise versus no treatment, moderate to large reduction of depression. Again, if you're not doing any other treatment and you simply start exercising, you're going to see a moderate to large reduction in the symptom of being depressed. Exercise versus psychotherapy, driving somewhere for half an hour, finding parking, waiting in a waiting room, talking to a psychotherapist helped, but it didn't help any more than exercise. Exercise versus popping pills, antidepressants. No meaningful difference. Now, they're not taking into account the side effects that many people suffer from taking antidepressants. There are no side effects of moderate exercise. Yes, if you run a marathon, you could tear a tendon or something, but there really aren't meaningful side effects of moderate exercise. They followed up at 8 to 12 months, 8 weeks to 12 months, and exercise still favored. It still helped. The benefits persisted even as people exercised less. That's the amazing thing. So we all see studies like this occasionally, but then we're back in the real world and we're bombarded with ads, reminders, insurance companies. Oh, do you want this? Your doctor's saying, did you go see this person? Your pharmacies now are so good at what they do. If you ever got a prescription for an antidepressant, they're going to send you a text and maybe call you, basically hound you till you go get that prescription refill. Why? They make money for it. If you decide you're going to walk for an hour after work or after dinner each day, chances are no one's hounding you for it because there's no profit motive. So that's why I'm urging you, figure out how to be your own advocate. Figure out how to give yourself reminders, create an ad campaign in your own little universe, sticky notes, email, text, so that you exercise more. Former special counsel Jack Smith appeared before Congress yesterday to defend his prosecutions and warn about the erosion of the rule of law. After 5 hours, Smith denied acting out of partisanship, rejected claims of political motivation, and said failing to hold powerful people accountable could be catastrophic. He also described threats and retaliation against prosecutors who worked on the cases. The hearing focused less on verdicts and more on whether legal norms can survive political pressure. Okay, I want to be transparent with you. I'm here as a sane, sensible centrist. My first goal is that we actually have something close to a democracy, a republic, you want to call it, where there's a rule of law. And I well understand that there is a potential, and we're seeing it right now, for one party to come into power and say, hey, let's kind of game the system. Let's use the full power of the Department of Justice and other legal levers to just imprison anyone we don't like, and that way we can stay in power. I understand that's a potential. But there's also the potential that someone can come to power, let's say a president, and they routinely break law after law after law. There has to be some way of holding them accountable. They cannot be above the law. Now, how you look at this often depends on, where you stand in our political spectrum. If you are a centrist, center-right, liberal, left, then I think it's pretty clear to you that Donald Trump routinely committed criminal acts during his first term and right after regarding January 6th. For people who are hardcore MAGA supporters, that just doesn't compute. In their world, it is absolutely an impossibility for Donald Trump, whether as president or as a civilian, could possibly ever commit any crime. I mean, if that's really your norm, or your attitude, I'm sorry, but you don't really believe in democracy. You believe in monarchy. You believe in a divine right that someone has been anointed. And hey, that's your right to believe that, but that's not what democracy is about. Okay, let's look at what he said, some of his specific quotes. And I will say, he's so soft-spoken. I don't think people are going to be clamoring for Jack Smith to run for president or senator anytime soon. But he certainly did not seem like anyone's idea of an outspoken partisan. He wasn't out there trashing. He didn't do the equivalent of a Pam Bondi, where every single question was greeted with a snide, nasty, cheap put down. He answered questions in a way that appeared to be fact-based. He did say his only regret was not expressing more appreciation for the FBI agents and prosecutors who worked for him, especially now that he's seen their careers destroyed for simply doing what they were supposed to be doing and investigating facts. Okay, let's look at some more exact quotes that he said. He said, "I will not be intimidated." Even though he didn't speak loudly and forcefully, he was quite clear that he wasn't just going to shut up and go away. He wasn't going to hide his head and hope to escape the wrath of Donald Trump. He clearly expects to be prosecuted, probably imprisoned. He's willing to do that. So he did come across to me as extraordinarily courageous, because he was asked about the personal attacks and threats. And he's saying, I will not be intimidated. He had a warning to America and to the legislators present. He says, the rule of law is not self-executing. And by that, he means we can't all just sort of sit around and assume everyone's going to do their job and that people will have to abide by laws and there will be consequences. No, it only works if people like Jack Smith get to do their job and people take it seriously. If you simply say, okay, my guy's in power, so any allegation, any investigation, any fact-based investigation that proves without a shadow of a doubt that they've committed a crime will simply be dismissed. If that is the attitude, and my friends, that is the attitude of tens of millions of Americans today, then you no longer have a rule of law. You have a monarchy, you have an autocracy, you have a mobocracy, you have something else, but you don't really have a rule of law anymore, which is something that conservatives, as well as centrists and liberals, have long claimed to value in America. Now, he specifically, categorically, under oath, denied that he had any orders to go after Trump, whether it was from Biden or Garland Merrick, the then Attorney General of the United States. He was given the charge of investigating facts, and he found the facts led him to the conclusion that January 6th was an illegal insurrection. It would not have happened without the constant fomenting of disinformation and illegality from Donald Trump. That's what he found. He stuck to it. And is it going to have any impact? Unfortunately, I don't think so. I think we live in a world now where a plurality of people have simply bought into the idea of laws only apply to people of the other party. And now we live in this reverse funhouse world where the very same people of that party are saying, okay, not only can you not hold us accountable for real laws, we can gin up fake laws and say you broke them, or we can just gin up fake evidence to say you're a criminal. And by all accounts, that's what's happening. Trump has sent signal, go after this guy, Jack Smith, go after Don Lemon. Thankfully, a judge slowed that down earlier this week. but we are seeing a highly, highly politicized justice system. And again, the irony, of course, is the previous administration was kind of like Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush's Department of Justice. It was non-politicized. So now the very same thing that this administration is charging the previous administration with, they themselves are implementing, and they're doing it all with a straight face. Where do you stand on this? I'd love to hear from you. And those of you who say, okay, anyone who criticizes Trump is automatically a part of the lunatic left, you can comment if you want. But just for once, try to use some facts, try to use some persuasion. I would appreciate it. Thanks. New political polling from the New York Times and Siena University finds that fewer than 1/3 of American voters believe the country is better off 1 year into President Trump's second term. Majorities say he's focused on the wrong policies and made life less affordable. That was his number one promise to people, to make things more affordable. While Republicans remain supportive in general, independents have turned sharply negative. Trump's approval in this particular poll was 40%, but that's on the higher side. Many, many other national polls now show him at 35%, signaling growing political risk as affordability dominates voter concerns. Now, when you look at his drop in the first year, we haven't seen anything like this in the history of the United States other than what happened to President Nixon when he was basically caught as a criminal and hounded out of office. So this is, I won't say unprecedented, because we did see an approval rating drop for President Nixon back in the early 70s. But as far as a president in their second term seeing such a precipitous drop, and it's not like he was that popular to begin with, but going down to the 35% range of approval is perilous territory for a politician in a democracy. More on that in just a moment. But first, a few more facts. According to this one survey, and this was one of the better surveys for Trump coming out in the last week, only 32% feel the country is better off than a year ago. 49% believe the country is worse off. His disapproval rating is 56%, and I've seen it in the 60s in other recent polls. 57% of voters say Trump is focused on wrong issues. Oh, let's invade Greenland. Wow, I wonder where people would have gotten the idea he was focused on the wrong issues. 51% of Americans say life is less affordable under President Trump. The approval rating of Trump among so-called independents, and let's keep in mind, most people who call themselves independent are not really independent. They typically vote for one party or the other in a very consistent manner. They just like to call themselves independents. The number of voters, this is a little bit surprising, according to this Siena poll, 42% said the president rated his first year as having success or some level of success. Frankly, I'm surprised it's that high. On the cost of living issue, he has a 34% approval rating. Again, that was his whole claim to fame. He promised not simply to lower inflation, he promised to get things back to the prices before Biden came in and ostensibly ruined the world. Well, prices have not gone down at all on average. On the issue of the Ukraine war, he has a 34% approval, 58% disapproval. Now, on this next one, really no surprise, regarding his handling of the Epstein files, he has a 22% approval rating. 66% of Americans disapprove of how President Trump has handled the Epstein files. Other polling data, Reuters Ipsos has a 36% approval rating for the president. That's typically considered such lame duck that members of your own party won't even be seen in public with you. That is what's different about President Trump. I'll give him credit. He still has the fealty of Republicans in power, Republican House members, Senate members, they still feel obligated to be close to him, to endorse him. You had Ted Cruz publicly saying, oh, I think it's a good idea that we invade Greenland or take over Greenland, essentially, when we know Ted Cruz doesn't really believe that. But the net approvals in most polls are negative 15 to 20%. So if you're a complete unknown and you're at zero approval, you have higher net approval ratings than the Trump does because he's negative 15 to 20 points. That many more people disapprove of him. Okay, so does this matter? Traditionally, it matters greatly in situations like the midterm because if a president is unpopular, they suffer a bigger beating at the midterm elections. Currently, in polling data on congressional races, hypothetical matchups, the Democrats are slated to win control back of the U.S. House. The Senate is still unlikely to switch to Democrats, but not impossible. But right now, it looks as though the Democrats could retake the Congress if things were run the same way they were 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. But the one thing we've seen with President Trump recently is he now feels empowered to do anything. He can just tell ICE officials, shoot somebody in the face if they seem like they're not pro-Trump. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. He wouldn't say it out loud, but that's the implied message, and he can get away with it. He can completely change the subject of all the news media by just removing a president of another country, change discussions. He's seen clearly he can just send troops into Democratic cities, cause disruption, cause anarchy, essentially, create mini civil wars. So, my prediction, and I hope I'm wrong, is if it's a couple of weeks before the election this year and we haven't actually seen President Trump formally declare the Democratic Party a terrorist organization and ban it, assuming we still have some semblance of normalcy 2 weeks out from the election this year, and it appears that the Democrats are winning and would regain the House, I fully anticipate Trump sending in troops to Democratic states, Democratic precincts, and causing enough havoc to prevent voting from Democratic heavily districts or precincts to then skew the elections in his favor. And after the fact, I fully expect and anticipate him using his force, his power, to manipulate supervisors of elections to only give him vote counts that help him. So that's why I'm not so sure Trump is really worried about these approval ratings, because if you don't really have to win elections in a fair count anymore, doesn't really matter, does it? What do you think? Post your comments right here in the discussion page. I would love to hear from you. Do mid-30s approval ratings for a president mean the end of a presidency, or is that just an old way of looking at things? Are we post-democratic at this point? Hey, I'm TJ Walker. Thanks so much for joining me today. This is Filtered. This is the show. Every day I bring to you a look at the top business, cultural, and technology stories of the day. We filter it through the lens of personal development with the idea of you improving, me improving, all of us getting better, more successful in our personal life as well as our professional life. So thanks so much for joining me. Please, if you're listening to this on any podcast platform, make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you are following me on that platform, and please leave a review. If you're watching this on YouTube, then please leave a comment, sign up for notifications, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks. See you tomorrow.